Hi guys, I'm about to release episode 1 of my Kingdom Come Deliverance playthrough, and I just want to take a few minutes to give you a bit of a heads up as to some of the frustrations I had in the first few episodes. And I'm not doing this to try and put you off the game, in fact quite the opposite. What I want to avoid is you looking at some of the initial moments in the game and thinking, oh, this is definitely not the game for me, because I did manage to get through some of the problems I was having. I fixed some issues and I got used to some of the ways this game is different. But I do appreciate when you're watching someone play a game, you don't always get all of the information from the person playing, and this is going to be one of those cases. I have played 6 episodes now, and I wanted to get a little into the game just to be sure that I was going to finish it before I even mentioned the Let's Play. I'm 6 episodes in, and I can tell you I've got rid of all the problems with feeling nauseous or having problems with the motion bobbing, and I'm actually beginning to really enjoy the game. Now, I'm not really talking about things like the fact that the game is kind of tough at the start. It really does go out of its way to make you feel feeble. You're the son of a blacksmith, you may be a little stronger than most, but you've got no combat experience, and if you get into a fight, you really have a limited set of tools at your disposal. An example of this is I got into a fight early on and couldn't figure out how to block, and indeed couldn't block at all. Now, I know there's a block key, but it didn't seem to do anything. And I have a feeling this is just something you will learn later on. It would seem that, you really just go into combat and flail around. If you're hitting someone with your wooden sword, you're just hitting them with the wooden sword and hoping like hell you connect. If you're in a fist fight, you're just punching like kids in a schoolyard. You're not doing the Muhammad Ali dodging and blocking sort of thing. It is realistic, but there are times when you will hear me going, why can't I block? Why can't I block? And the answer is, because Henry can't block. That's the reason. Now, the sorts of things I'm talking about are some minor issues with the mechanics that are just a matter of the game not having been polished in certain areas. A prime example of this is the way it handles the mouse when in the user interface, the inventory for example, or trading. Now, don't get me wrong, it's old school and I love it. It really does look like an old school RPG whenever you're doing anything like that, when you're trading some stuff. But believe it or not, the mouse implementation is not particularly instinctive for someone who's used to using the mouse. In fact, at times it doesn't even feel like it does what it's supposed to do. An example of this would be I was trying to trade cheese. I was trying to sell cheese to a trader, and every time I clicked on the cheese, it wasn't adding cheese to the basket. It was adding an apple. Now, I didn't notice this at first because I was looking at the money and I was adding cheese and then wondering why this expensive cheese was only being offered for a tiny fraction of its price. And I was assuming incorrectly this was just because I sucked at bartering. I do suck at bartering, but it was also the fact that I was trying to sell an apple instead of a cheese. This is kind of a little weird. It really is. Now, I did figure it out after a while. I did start to notice it, and you can do everything using the keyboard, and that seems to be the better way of handling things. There is probably a way of using the mouse to do these things, but honestly I think it would take longer to do it with the mouse. It's what is selected is not necessarily what you click with the mouse. So if you scroll down and click on cheese, but the thing selected is an apple, it won't select it for you. You have to use the arrow keys to move the selection, and that is really uninstinctive to a mouse user. So that did cause some problems. I did get used to it. Once I was used to it, I managed to sort of move on. But you're going to see this in the playthrough, and now that I've mentioned it, you're going to see it straight away, and you're going to be screaming, "You're trying to sell the cheese, you idiot!" And yeah, well, sorry, you're going to be screaming, "No, you're trying to sell an apple, you idiot!" And yeah, I know now. So It's little things like that. Another moment of sheer frustration that's probably going to frustrate you as well is a moment where I was trying to run away from an enemy and failing to do so. I'm sort of like, why can't I run away? I'm trying to run away. And you might be thinking, no, you're not. You're just looking at this enemy. Well, run away, turn around and run. And I was just unable to, or at least it was very difficult to do so. Oh, by the way, running away, that's a thing you're going to do in this game. If you're the sort of person who wants to play a super strong hero from the moment go, this game is really going to frustrate you. You are not going to be playing badass pawns a lot. You really are not. You're the son of a blacksmith, and if you face a professional soldier or more than one, running away is a thing. If you wanted to play the I run from no man sort of thing, this game is going to really hurt. Yes, it is. So anyway, trying to run away, and I came a cropper of the auto lock-on system. Now, this game does have a full-on lock-on mechanism. Ordinarily, I don't like those things. I generally see them as a bit of a crutch for mouse and keyboard users at least. I always find games in general are better played without that because it gives you a little more flexibility in how you move, and if you learn to play without relying on that, you generally play better later on. This is probably not one such game. You need the lock-on mechanic because you don't just use the mouse to adjust the camera, you use the mouse to decide which direction you attack from. And you can do it without locking on. You can do it. It is possible, but you have to be really subtle and really precise with your mouse movements. And at the early stages, I wasn't getting it. I may try to get it later on, but for now, I'm going to be using the lock-on mechanics a reasonable amount. As I said, there is an auto lock-on, though. So even if you don't lock on an opponent, if you're in combat, you will turn towards your opponent pretty much constantly. Every time your opponent comes near to you, your character will just start turning towards him and, in general, try and keep you facing anyone who's trying to hit you. That might sound useful, and it might be, but it's also really frustrating. When I was trying to run away, you can do it. You can turn and break the combat, but it keeps trying to turn you back. If it's just one opponent, you'll probably do okay. If you've got multiple opponents, it keeps trying to turn you into the opponents, and it really does. It has you running in, you try and run away, and then you turn back and start running towards them. It got a little frustrating. I have since learned that you can disengage. Well, I knew you could disengage. There's a disengage button, but it was the mouse wheel, and I was pressing it, disengaging, and then re-engaging. What you have to do is hold the button whilst you're trying to disengage. That is not as easy as it sounds when sort of rushing around and trying not to die on the mouse wheel, at least not on my mouse. I was finding the mouse wheel slipping all the time, which changes target rather than disengage. So I rebound the key, and now I've got no problem. If I want to disengage from combat, I just hold the key and run away. It's not a problem now, but it's the sort of thing you need to learn, and it was a really frustrating moment. Oh, you can actually put the weapon away, and that will disengage. That works as well. And as you can hear, a lot of this comes down to the game sort of behaving a little differently to a lot of other games. It comes down to it not behaving in a typical way. And ordinarily, when a game does this, I will critique it. If a game is not using the mouse and keyboard the way I expect in similar games, I will say, hey, you're not following the expected mechanics, and that makes it very uninstinctive to play your game. The thing is, with KCD, it has such an interesting mechanic when it comes to things like combat that they had to change the way you work with your mouse and keyboard, and it just takes a little getting used to. So those first few episodes are me getting used to the new form of combat, and the fact that the mouse implementation, especially in the user interface, is a little off. And actually, on that side of things, I will criticize them. Inventories and mouse, they were made for each other. They really were. The fact that selecting things and trading things with a mouse is a little confusing to someone who does this in a thousand other games in the same way. That I'm going to put down to a lack of polish in the game. There is one other issue that's not really me getting used to something, but again, a technical issue with the game, and that is the subtitles. This is going to be fairly important. In my playthroughs, I generally enable every single type of subtitle for people who don't speak English or people who might have hearing problems. So that even includes people who are talking not to me, but to each other. And in Skyrim, for example, it comes up underneath with the subtitle. In KCD, it has the subtitle floating over their head when they're chatting to each other. When you're in direct conversation with them, it's a very standard text is below the person kind of way, and it works perfectly. But when you're just wandering around and they're chatting, it has the text floating above their heads. I think The Witcher 3 did something similar, but for some reason in KCD it really doesn't work at all. What actually happens is the text just shimmers and flickers because it moves with them. It stays exactly above their head. And if you move or they move, it kind of shimmers, and it's very difficult to explain, but I found it really did cause me some nausea, and it caused me some eye strain. And I think, if it had the text come up, but the text stays more or less where they are, but doesn't follow them perfectly, it probably would have worked. But whatever it is, the subtitles for idle chatter around me really drove me nuts in the first 2 episodes, and you might find it does that to you too. And you might be thinking, I can't watch this with those, I'm sorry. I turned it off after the 2nd episode. I turned it off. I couldn't take it any longer, so it will disappear. Of course, for people who would like subtitles, this is going to be a problem, but honestly, I think even you are going to agree, trying to read them while playing, especially if I don't stop, if you're trying to read them as I'm moving around, it was pretty bad. So I did turn that off. So bear that in mind if you like subtitles. Anyway, that is pretty much it. I know I don't do this for most games I play. I recognize that the first few episodes are going to have moments where either my lack of knowledge or some very minor things with the game will paint the game in a negative light. And I wanted people to be prepared for that and understand that I'm actually at episode 6 or 7 now, and I've got past all of these issues, and I'm honestly beginning to really enjoy the game, even though I'm not far into it at all. The beginning tutorial area is actually quite long, and indeed once you've got through it and the game starts properly, I get the feeling that there's a lot more tutorialing to do because I still don't know how to block. But the game does start to gel with you. You get used to the differences. You tweak the graphics or the subtitles to your liking, and you figure out that using the mouse when trading is probably a bad idea. And all of a sudden things start to move more smoothly, and you can start to focus on the game. And honestly, I am enjoying it now. So I did want to give you guys a warning on this so that you didn't judge the game too harshly, too quickly, or me too harshly, too quickly, for that matter. Honestly, I can sort of see it when I look at the footage when I'm screaming, why can't I run away, or why can't I block? It must be very frustrating to not know that what I'm actually doing is I'm trying to hit the block key or I'm trying to turn, and it's just not doing what I want it to do. So, don't judge the game, don't judge me. Things do go a little better later on. And that's really all I want to say on this. I'm going to release the first episode pretty soon, so I hope you enjoyed the playthrough as much as I'm actually beginning to enjoy the game itself.